Saints Buccaneers preview Week 17 NFC South on the line with Pro Football Focus. This game is a must-win for both teams, but very different reasons. The Saints have to win to keep this miracle dream alive of somehow backing into the NFC South Championship. The Saints need to beat the Bucs, beat the Falcons, and have the Panthers beat the Bucs. The Bucs, if they win, they are in. If they win, they are NFC South champions. If they win, they are popping bottles of champagne. If they win, they clinch a playoff spot. So motivation, I would say err towards the Bucs because it's a much more realistic possibility. It's much more now. They win this game, it's over. The Saints, they have to win, but they also need some help over the next week or so. So let's go ahead and break down the game. A lot to talk about here. We'll give you, my score prediction, thoughts, all that stuff. Let's go.
New Orleans Saints at the Tampa Bay Bucs. Bucs favored by 2.5 against the Saints. Speaking of teams that are trending in certain directions, the Bucs really finding their way the last couple weeks.
Yeah, the Bucs have looked good. I mean, the Bucs are playing good football. I don't think the Bucs are great. I mean, I'm not, splitting the atom telling y'all that. I do think they're playing better than the Falcons, the Saints, and the Panthers. I think they're playing the highest level of the NFC South. A few weeks ago, we talked about each team in the NFC South, and the Buccaneers, the big positive for them is that they have a bunch of people on the team who are winners, who have won, who know what it's like, who have made playoff runs for different teams. Baker Mayfield, say what you want about him, he is a winner. He has won games. He pushed the Cleveland Browns to double-digit wins, playoff berth. He was within striking distance of beating the Chiefs in the playoffs. So is Baker Mayfield a Hall of Famer at this point? No, right? But he's a guy who does have experience in these moments. And people like Desmond Ridder, Derek Carr even, certainly Bryce Young, don't have that experience. Also on the team, the Chris Godwins, the Mike Evans, even Todd Bowles, people on the team, Devin White, people on the team are used to the situation. And in these moments of the season where everyone has 7-8 wins, everyone's kind of, chips are down, having that experience has helped the Buccaneers navigate a very sloppy playoff landscape. And Baker Mayfield is playing well. He's playing good. He's playing good football. They have a nice system right now where he is successful. And is he a Pro Bowler? Is he an MVP vote receiver? No, right? But when your counterparts are Derek Carr, Bryce Young, Desmond Ridder, Taylor Heineke, you don't have to be. You just have to be average to above average. And Baker Mayfield has certainly been average to above average. A little note on the side, -2.5. I'm seeing 3. It'll probably go back to 2.5 by kickoff. It's been kind of rubber banding between 2.5 and 3 all week. So I'd assume this sits at 3 come kickoff, but a little bit of fluidity with the line.
Impressive offensive performances against the Packers, but also against the Jags last week. Baker Mayfield, if you want to use the 2-week splits, Baker Mayfield's QB2 the last couple of weeks because I'm still on that page. 6 touchdowns, no picks, over 10 yards per attempt, passer rating of 141 over these last couple of weeks because he had that perfect passer rating, against Green Bay. But the Bucs offense seems to be finding their way. Defense has been tough, I think, for most of the season anyway. Going up against the Saints. And the X factor here is the Saints in Tampa Bay the last couple of years, and the Brady era in particular, always played well in Tampa. You got Mike.
I hate that. I hate those stats. Y'all know I always talk about how much I dislike whenever people use, previous era or previous year statistics like that. Like they always play tough in Tampa. What does that mean? What does that mean? Different players, different coaches, there's so much happening. To me, it has absolutely no bearing on this game at all. Whatever the Saints did against Tampa when Tom Brady was there, who cares? Because all I know is in the Dome this year against Tampa, the Saints got absolutely steamrolled and dominated. So this idea that, they play the Bucs tough or they always low-scoring game or always this or always that, I don't care about any of that because the defense isn't playing as good. If you're looking at the defense from 2 years ago, you've got aging players. Marshawn Lattimore's not playing. You've got rookies all over the place. You've got injuries. You've got all kind of different things happening. All right, so throw away whatever you think about how the Saints play the Buccaneers when Simeon Rice was the defensive end, when Rondé Barber was in the secondary. I cannot stand when teams are compared with different coaches, different players, different eras, different everything.
Evans and Marshawn Lattimore storyline.
That's always fun.
Yeah, always. Can Baker in the Bucs? Look, the Bucs beat the Saints in Tampa Bay last year. Remember Brady had all those, like, they would just sleepwalk for three quarters and then make this ridiculous comeback. It was something like 16-3 with 7 minutes left or whatever last year, 5 minutes left, and the Bucs won. So the Bucs kind of got the monkey off their back, beating New Orleans in Tampa Bay, but it's been a thing these last couple of years.
And they won handily the first game earlier.
And in the
year.
first game in the Dome, the Bucs took it to them. So it could be a whole different thing. But a 3-point game. Vegas is expecting, a hard-fought division battle here.
Yeah, I mean, this is it for the Saints, right? Like, this was the team. This was where they were supposed to be. Like, they were supposed to be the team, albeit with fairly pathetic control over the division, but the team that was going to win this division with Derek Carr being just good enough to take you to the postseason and probably not much further. And now it's not working out. Tampa Bay has seized control of this division with a couple of wins against the division, Carolina and Atlanta, and then those games against Green Bay and Jacksonville.
I think the Rams game was backbreaking for the Saints, motivationally. I think the idea that they were kind of riding this streak of a couple of good wins, go to the Rams game, prime time. If you win that game, you kind of control your destiny. They don't control their destiny anymore. And I think getting beat the way that they got beat in Los Angeles in front of the entire universe, I'm not going to say they're down, but I would think the motivation is not the same with Bucs and the Saints. The idea that, and this is a handicapping rule towards the end of the season, you always want to try and figure out who's got the motivational edge. Same with bowl games. Which team is playing their starters, which team is not, which team has opt-outs, whatever. You got to think the Buccaneers' motivation is higher than the Saints. The Buccaneers are at home. They can clinch this on their home field in front of their home fans. They have 4 quarters. They win these 4 quarters of the season, boom, they clinch. They can put the hats on, put the T-shirts on, all that fun stuff. That's not what the Saints are thinking. The Saints are they're thinking long term. Okay, so if we're just looking at this singular game, the Buccaneers have to have max motivation. If the Saints' motivation is ramped up because it's a must-win game, and it's ramped up to like a 7 out of 10, the Buccaneers have to be 10 out of 10. So I'm giving the motivational edge to the Buccaneers. On top of that, it's on the road for the Saints. Saints, that's always tough to travel on the road, especially in the division. Next, Alvin Kamara is sick. Alvin Kamara's, we can call it injured. He's sick. He hasn't practiced. He's questionable for this weekend. Not that matters, because Pete Carmichael and Dennis Allen and the brain trust that we have in New Orleans can't even get Alvin Kamara the ball. So it doesn't matter if he's sick, if he's healthy, who knows. But you're talking about, just look at it from a Saints perspective. You could be losing your best offensive player, whether Pete Carmichael and Dennis Allen know that or not. You've got a injured, recovering Taysom Hill who has done virtually nothing for the last 2 weeks. Absolutely nothing. You've got injuries on the defensive side. Marshawn Lattimore hasn't played in however long. You've got, on the flip side, you've got a Buccaneers team playing really well. So how are the Saints going to win this game? Is Jamal Williams going to win the game for the Saints? Is Kendra Miller going to win the game for the Saints? Is Lynn Bowden going to win the game for the Saints? Who's going to win? Is Chris Olave going to carry this team to a victory? I just don't see how the Saints go into Tampa and win this game.
So they're on a 4-game win streak now, which has propelled them to that 8-7 record, which in the NFC South makes you some kind of god as a team. So it's the team that they were supposed to be versus the team that they actually are. And if the Saints want anything out of this year, they have to show up and have their biggest performance of the year against this Tampa Bay team, which is surging, but against some pretty weak opposition.
Yeah.
Is Lattimore even available? He's out, isn't he?
Come on.
Yes.
You don't get to see Mike Evans versus Lattimore?
No, he's on IR. Boo. As of 2 days ago. Well, he's been on IR, but he's not. Dennis Allen is non-committal about Lattimore, and it's
kind of shocking. I mean, I'm not expecting I'm not expecting analysts to know the ins and outs of every single team, but good Lord, I mean, you're talking about the best defensive player has been on IR for the better part of a month. And we're 3 minutes into their video, and they're just now trying to figure out if the best defensive back for the Saints is going to be available to try and stop the best wide receiver for the Buccaneers.
It seems like he won't return to practice this week, which is always sad.
Yeah.
Mike Evans is cooking. That would really test things. Evans has had some success against Lattimore. Like, he'll have a few catches.
Yeah,
in that first matchup, remember, it was like they were going after it. Evans took it to Lattimore.
They always do. I mean, what makes that matchup fun is that those guys just get hyper physical and go to war. Obviously Lattimore is the best version of that because we've seen it year after year after year, but all those Saints corners play the same kind of way. I mean, even without
Saints are very physical. Their secondary has always been physical. That lends to penalties and stuff like that, but we've always said I would rather them be physical and get those penalties and be handsy and all that stuff. I'd much rather that than the other way. So the Saints do play like that. Alontae Taylor plays like that. Paulson Adebo plays like that. So the Saints secondary isn't full strength, but they're going to show you that same kind of style. Can they slow down Evans? Can they slow down this Buccaneers offense? I don't know. Hopefully it's not a repeat of what we saw in Los Angeles, where Alontae Taylor was benched because of what Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp were doing to him.
Lattimore, how they defend Mike Evans is something to watch in this game because all of the Saints corners get physical. Paulson Adebo, Isaac Yiadom, like all of the guys they have get in your face, cause problems, get physical, turn it into a fight. And as long as you have an officiating crew that's willing to work with you, that becomes fun.
So the Bucs have a chance. They can clinch the NFC South with a win. And an Atlanta loss. But if they win this, the path, it goes through Tampa Bay either way. Their last 2 weeks, winning the last 2 weeks has been huge for the Bucs to put them in this position. For the Saints to win the South, they have to win this game. Then they have to beat Atlanta. I think it's Atlanta in Week 18. And then might still need the Bucs to lose to the Panthers next week as well. So the Saints would need a lot of help, but it all starts here. If the Saints can pull the upset in Tampa Bay, 2.5-point underdogs. Again, Saints offensive line has had issues, and they've just been so inconsistent offensively.
I was thinking about that this morning before I did this video. The Saints really haven't been inconsistent. We are 2 games out, ladies and gentlemen. We are 2 games away from the season being over. This is just who the Saints are. This is just the offense. This is them. This is it. You can't be inconsistent when you're the same thing for the entire season. The Saints have been the exact same thing for the entire season. They've been a below average offense. That's it. The only thing that has really shown promise as far as like being up and down was at the beginning of the year, the defense was really good. So you could say the defense was maybe inconsistent. I mean, they've been consistently below average as of late. But the offense, we consistently cannot run the football. We haven't had over 90 yards rushing any player this season. We haven't had a 100-yard running back. We average 2.5 yards a rush consistently. Passing wise, we consistently can't do anything passing. We consistently have about 180 yards passing. So it's easy for me as a fan, and I'm sure you watching as a fan, it's easy to look at this and say, well, maybe the Saints can do this. We've been inconsistent because our ceiling is high. We believe the ceiling is high. Our hope is high. But when you step back and look at the 16-game sample size or the 15-game sample size, they really haven't been consistent. They've basically shown you what they're going to do. They have not scored a touchdown on opening possession the entire season. That's about as consistent as it gets. You know, that's not an inconsistent offense. That is that is the definition of consistency.
With Derek Carr under center. Every time the Saints show signs of life, they seem to just lay an egg.
Yeah.
And come back down to earth. So season's on the line. Can they do anything here? Last time we saw them really struggled against the Rams on Thursday Night Football. Tried to make a little bit of a comeback. Again, why was I so optimistic about the Saints? It was a bad schedule and playmakers. All season I was like, hey, Derek Carr's not great. He's not bad. He's mid-tier quarterback.
Yeah, same. I mean, I predicted this team to have 11, 12 wins because of the roster. I thought it was good enough, certainly talented enough. And Derek Carr I thought would be average to above average. Now, it's kind of funny because if you flip it, I thought the Saints would basically be what the Buccaneers are right now. I thought Carr would be average to above average. Mayfield has been average to right now. He's playing above average. In the last 2 weeks, Razor Ramon just said it. Baker Mayfield over the last 2 weeks has been the second best quarterback in the NFL. Then I thought, well, our playmakers are pretty good. Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, Rashid Shaheed, pretty strong wide receiver room, which is what the Buccaneers have, right? With Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. Then I thought Alvin Kamara can be a top 10 running back, which is what Rachaad White is for the Buccaneers. So really, and then I thought the defense could be good to great, which is what the Buccaneers are doing. Throw on top of that the easiest schedule the NFL has ever created, and I thought, boom, the Saints can walk into 10 wins. That's the floor. And if they are good, if they excel, if we catch lightning in a bottle, that 10 wins can go to 12, no problem. And I was obviously wrong.
To your quarterback with dudes who get open down the field, that should create some explosive offense. Like the raw stats are kind of there for Carr.
Not really.
But there's just something missing all season for the Saints team. So
Tampa Bay's defense.
What's been missing? An identity, scheme, thought, game planning, coaches, life, anything.
This has been better in recent weeks as well. Now, again, you look at the competition, you're like, how much of that is who they were playing versus actually the Bucs defense is on an upturn. But that, like, the Bucs defense should have been better than it has been for a lot of this season. And I think Todd Bowles has taken a lot of criticism because it hasn't been.
Devin White's been terrible. A couple of weeks ago, he was benched, healthy scratch. I was reading a thing about how it was like some deep analytic, deep metric, basically like an EPA situation. And Devin White was the worst linebacker in the NFL for the metric. And so he just has it. That's why when you have a player like Devin White who can be the best defensive player in the league, and when he's playing that poorly, it's going to drag down the entire defense. I don't know if he's picked it up recently. Again, this was a couple weeks ago. He had the healthy scratch. So I don't know about the ins and outs of Devin White's last couple of weeks.
This is another game where, like, if you want that to continue, that the defense needs to show up and all its best players fire and all those kinds of things.
Yeah. Like I said, Tampa's offense is they're playing better overall. They're still only averaging 18 points a game at home this year, Tampa Bay. But recent trends, if they matter, they're playing well, averaging 31 points per game over the last 3 weeks, the Bucs. So 2.5 point favorites, Tampa Bay. Where are you going with this one?
I think you got to take Tampa. I mean, more than likely, I'll have a position on the Buccaneers money line. I don't really mess around with like -1, -2, -2.5. I'd much rather pay the extra price and not get hooked. I just don't see it. I mean, you got to take your bias. I always say it would be disingenuous for me to come on here every single preview and say, I think the Saints are going to win. I hope the Saints win. I always am rooting for the Saints, but I also do try and give y'all an honest prediction. Just like the Rams, we pick the Rams, the Jaguars, pick the Jaguars, whatever. So Lions, we pick the Lions. I hope the Saints win. Sure. I hope they win the NFC South. I hope I get to go to a playoff game. But they aren't playing good enough. They aren't doing anything. that would make me think this team can go into Tampa and beat the Buccaneers. On top of our players are hurt. On top of who is going to do it? Think about what Kamara means to this team. If he's sick or if he's out, how do you think it's going to go for the Saints? I just don't see a path for the Saints winning this game. The only way they could possibly win the game is defensive turnovers. If all of a sudden we're +3, +4 in the turnover battle, if there's some fumbles or some fluky stuff or a defensive touchdown or a punt return or a kickoff return or stuff like that. And you certainly can't predict that. So if all things are equal, I think the Buccaneers win. I can see it being a sluggish type game. I could see it being something to the tune of 20-10, somewhere in there. 23-10, 23-17 kind of situation. So I'll say 24-17 Bucs. Yeah, 24-17 Bucs is my official prediction.
I'm going with the Bucs.
I am too.
Yeah.
Now, are you going to come back on the Baker bandwagon?
No.
Yeah, I think Baker's okay. I mean, I've heard a lot of people saying like, "Oh, does this mean Baker's a franchise quarterback?" This Baker is doing what you want a bridge quarterback to do. When you go get a Baker Mayfield, you're not asking him to be the franchise quarterback. You're asking him to stabilize the franchise, play at an average level, maybe at times play above average, and then let your franchise figure itself out. That is what you are watching Baker Mayfield do right now is what you want any and every bridge quarterback to be. People get too wrapped up in, is blank player a franchise quarterback? There's so many different levels to playing quarterback. And right now you're seeing that bridge option. Mayfield's doing it to a perfect extent right now of that bridge quarterback. So am I on the Baker bandwagon? No. Do I think Baker Mayfield is the future in Tampa Bay? No. But as Tampa Bay figures out who they are, Baker is holding serve. He's keeping things stable.
Why?
I said I wouldn't.
He's playing well.
Set him out.
He's playing well.
He's playing pretty well. I'm still out. I'm not buying back. I'm not getting sucked back into the Baker Mayfield thing. No. I've learned. It's over.
This is the challenge. I did so many radio hits probably 2.5 years ago, whatever the time period was, when Baker they didn't pick up his fifth-year option in Cleveland and let him go. Mm-hmm. And it was like Seattle needed a quarterback and Pittsburgh. And I go on all these radio hits, and I'm like, of course you should take a flyer on Baker Mayfield. Of course you should.
Yeah.
And then it looked like an idiot, right? Because the Panthers did, and he goes to the Rams, and he's just all over the place. And the flyer didn't work. And the Bucs really just took a simple flyer on Baker Mayfield.
They didn't really take a flyer. Like he's getting paid for. Sam Darnold is getting paid more money this year than Baker Mayfield.
You're
Yeah, I mean, you look at a quarterback like that. Like, I understand Pittsburgh kind of did that with they have Pickett, so I guess it is a little bit different. But like, Baker is the guy for those teams that he's explaining. Yeah, you go get him, let him be the bridge. Even if you have like Kenny Pickett in Pittsburgh and you get Baker Mayfield and let Pickett sit and learn or whatever, or Washington, I understand like Jacoby Brissett is kind of that bridge quarterback there, but there's a lot of teams that could use Baker Mayfield, and a lot of teams where if you're a fan of those teams, you got to be looking around like, why didn't we go get Baker Mayfield? Why didn't we do that? Which I'm sure a lot of people are thinking the same thing with Joe Flacco. It's like, why have we been sitting through whoever, watching just horrific quarterback play? Why are we doing that when we could have had these guys? So, it's been an interesting year for quarterbacks in the NFL.
Right. It wasn't even a flyer. It was really just like the end of musical chairs.
It was just like, we're not going to bother investing in quarterback this year.
Yeah. We know that we're in, a cap situation. He's our bridge quarterback. He's a starting caliber quarterback. And here they are on the verge of making the playoffs. So I was finally right 2.5 years later after, 3 other stops or whatever it was. But yeah, it's been an impressive year for Mayfield. They're already talking about what it looks like to bring him back, if it's a Geno Smith-like, mid-level contract, but impressive last few weeks here for Baker and the Bucs.
Yeah. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, who are you going with in this game? What's your prediction? What's your preview? All that stuff. Do the Saints go and pull off the miracle? Do they get it done? And are they one step closer to the miraculous NFC South title? Or do the Buccaneers all but clinch with a win here and then, tidy a few things up with future Atlanta losses or beating Carolina or whatever? But for all intents and purposes, lock up the division with a win here at home. Let me know, ladies and gentlemen, what you think. I will see you in the next video. Peace.